dynamic tent right now, I reckon. What do you reckon? Yeah. Well, I'm going to get cracking on, and I'm going to start by reading a story from my family's life, really. I'd like to say hello to my wife over there. Now, the reason why I want to say hello to my wife, Rachel, is because even though I talk a lot about, and my chapter is around our experience of being foster mum and dad in a foster family, even though I talk a lot about that, it's really my wife that's the expert. So I take all the glory for all of her knowledge and wisdom. So I want to start off with this chapter. The beginning of this is called A Surprise Knock on the Door. Our journey as foster parents began in 2002. My wife and I had been invited by the local church to be part of a new mission initiative in a small neighbourhood in Birmingham. Drawing on our skills and my profession, we set up a youth project specifically aimed at supporting young people who were deemed to be at risk. I recall the day when we met a very remarkable and confident young child. Aged 6, she knocked on our door and said, "I would like to join your club." She was dressed in boys' clothes that were 2 sizes too big and had incredibly messy afro hair on top of her head. She stared at me with these beautiful brown eyes, and with great enthusiasm she asked if she could join the club. And it was with sadness that I had to say, "I'm really sorry, you're too young." And with a huff, she turned and she stormed off. About 10 minutes later, there was another knock at the door. She was back, but this time she had brought this big, intimidating-looking man with a scar cut across his face. "My daughter wants to join your club," she growled. I immediately said, "No problem, absolutely fine. Pick her up in 2 hours." It was not long after that her dad, unfortunately, had to go away. And this little girl and her brother, they moved in and became part of our family. Now, I'm going to come back to that story, but that was our introduction to being a foster family. We were like just chucked in to that in terms of our connection and our relationship. So we're going to revisit her a bit later on, but I want to talk a little bit about what it is, some of the interesting things and struggles and hopes that we have had being a foster family, but particularly within a Christian and church setting. One of the most annoying things, I think Rachel will agree with me, that we hear from people is when they come up to us and they look at our family and they go, "You know, these children, they're so lucky to have you. You're doing a great thing." And I think about this and I think, actual fact, these kids aren't lucky at all. And actual fact, it's heartbreaking that they have to come and live with us. We're not some great saviour that has come to take these children out of a bad situation and give them a hopeful life. That might be one way of looking at it. But another way of looking at it is these kids have been profoundly let down by the very people and circumstances in society that were supposed to keep them safe. And I want you to imagine this. We do this exercise when we're teaching on adoption and foster training. What we do is we give these prospective people that want to be foster mums and dads, and we give them a piece of string. We talk to them about this issue of attachment, and we say, right, we want you to get a piece of string, and we're going to tell you a story, and every single time this child moves, we want you to cut that piece of string. So I want you to imagine this in your minds, that you've got this piece of string. So we say, so at birth, the child is born. This commonly happens. They straight away get removed from mum. So they do a cut. And then they get put in what's called emergency or temporary foster care. And maybe they stay there for maybe a month, maybe 2 months, until they can go to what's called short term. So they move out of there to a short term, what we use the word placement, hate it. So do another cut in this string. And then the family try and fight really hard to get the child back. And maybe they're able to pass the tests. So they go back with mum, and then another cut. But then it gets too hard, so they have to move out again. So another cut happens, and they're with another emergency foster care. But it's okay, because we want to see if we can give them a sense of permanency. So we find another couple that eventually go, yeah, we want this child for a bit longer term, so another cut happens. And then someone might come around to try to adopt this child. So they prepare this child and then they go for adoption, and then they have to leave that foster care and another cut happens. But by this time, I don't know if you've been keeping this in your mind, but there's so many phrases in the string that every single time this child is removed and has to go to another family, and then back to a family, and then relatives, and again, it's like they're being ripped. This thing called attachment, this thing that we need as humans that connect us with one another, and especially as children, gets ripped again and again and again. So the other thing is I was also in foster care, and I was also adopted. So not only do I get to support these kids, I also get to share in a bit of that journey. And I started going to church when I was about 10, 11. One of the things that I really struggled with is when I went to church, it was at that time where we had this idea that God fixes people. And I thought, yeah, I want some of that. And I heard this message that all of this stuff that I was bringing, all of this pain, all of this trauma that I was bringing myself, if I went to church and said a prayer, God would fix it. But the tricky thing is I didn't get fixed. And one of our observations with many of our children that we've had over, I think we've been fostering for 23, 24 years, is many of them still don't seem to be getting fixed. So what do we do with that? How do we get our heads around that? And I have a bit of an idea. And that is, our hope in that is the cross. And what I mean by that is it is that space which we can dwell with Jesus in that place of brokenness. And I often say to these enthusiastic Christians, which obviously we all are here, let's not rush from the Crucifixion Friday to Resurrection Sunday. Because for many of these children, that may never happen this side of his kingdom coming in all its fullness. So, on that, I want to finish by reading the final bit of my chapter, and then I'll promote the book a bit.
Excellent song.
Sally's just said excellent on, I think, the promoting the book a bit. I think that's what she is excited about. So the final piece of my chapter is called Blessed Are Those Who Mourn. And this is really pertinent to me because we sit with so many children and young people who mourn. And they may never get to that place where they are fixed this side of the kingdom of heaven. So I guess this raises some questions. Where is the hope for these young people, and how can we love them? In answering this question, I want to begin with these words from Jesus. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. As I reflect on these words, I find it striking that there is no mention of the pain being taken away or the problem being fixed. The blessing is in the act of being comforted. In order to comfort someone, you have to enter that space with them. This beatitude conjures up images of a person getting alongside, being with and embracing the mourner, even weeping with them in their pain. As my wife and I have journeyed with many of our children who live with trauma of separation and abandonment, we have come to learn that the road to becoming whole is a difficult and long one and may never be achieved. When a child or young person comes to us, we create space for them to be who they need to be. This can manifest itself in anger, argumentativeness, running away, or even outright rejection of us. We do not attempt to change their behaviour, but strive to listen, understand, and hold them in their pain. Curiosity is a great tool for this. As we ask questions like, I wonder what's happening for you today, we open up an understanding and a seeing of the child. In addition to this, we attempt to create an environment of playfulness. This is a powerful tool for connection, and using playfulness, turn the page, acceptance, curiosity and empathy, this is a thing that's called PACE, we can begin to journey with the child towards some form of healing and wholeness. So back to the little girl that knocked on our door, now over 20 years ago. Although she still feels a great sense of sadness and pain, and the trauma in her early years keeps emerging with the intent to undermine her progress, she has managed to form a deep connection with us and our family. Each Sunday she comes around our house with her 8-year-old daughter, and we sit around the table and have Sunday lunch together. This table is a communion table. As we share in this meal with one another, we find ourselves identifying with the crucified Jesus. For our family, we very rarely make it to Resurrection Day, but discover our hope and joy, trauma and pain in the loving and comforting presence of Jesus. As he calls out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" he is able to join us as we live with the trauma of our separation and abandonment. The wonder and mystery of our home is that it is a space that simultaneously holds the hope and trauma of the cross. This enables us to welcome and accept every aspect of the children that come to us. All the great stuff as well as the trauma and horror of their experiences. But even deeper than this, our foster children take us on a life-changing journey. All the children that we have looked after have taught us something new about God and ourselves. They all leave a bit of themselves behind, and we are forever richer and greatly blessed by them.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
One final thing to say. I have to quickly promote this book. We will be selling the book next door. Steve Chalk, who's going to be talking in about 10 minutes or so, has also written a chapter. I'm happy to sign your book if you want me to sign it, Steve. Very happy to do that. But I'm also happy to be around next door in the bookstore if anyone wants to carry on.
Thank you, Simon, for your tale. Excellent. And now straight